Good afternoon, everybody. My name is Sean Carlson from Blackjack 98 Enterprises. Okay, so what we have here is one of the various weed eaters that I have ever worked on, but this one is different because it does not have a model number on it. I cannot find the model number anywhere, but it should be similar as all the others that I have worked on. There's a warning label. This is a straight shaft, dual line cutter head. What we're going to do is we're going to strip this down to its components, this here. We're going to grease the shaft. We're going to do a complete tear down of this engine. Now, I bought this from a guy off of Facebook Marketplace, and he was starting it up for me. And after he pulled this, he was able to pull it, and when he did, here, let me show you. You can see that the head turns. So what that means is that there is no clutch on this weed whacker. So we're gonna turn it. He said that there's a little bit of gas in there, and I still don't see any model numbers on this, but there is probably serial numbers on this. I'm going to take this cover off. Ooh, look at that. Brand spanking new filter, air filter. It's either that or this is a sponge, which you can use a sponge. There's the flywheel, there's the choke. So yeah, this is all going to come off. Everything's going to get all cleaned up, nicely tuned up. And this will get stripped apart and greased. Not much else to say, but let's go do it. Okay, so you're going to need a T25 hex key, and these are the only two that are in there, and these two hold the entire thing together. The housing, the carburetor, and this part here to the block. So the minute you take those out, everything's going to fall apart. So let's do that. See how loose everything's becoming? There we go. Pay attention to loose parts that are coming off. Don't do this with one hand like I am doing. Okay, so as you can see, this carburetor is like very dirty. This needs to be cleaned. What's going to happen is I'm going to replace the primer bulb. I'm going to replace the fuel line. I'm going to replace the fuel filter. Inside here, there is a carburetor repair kit. I will replace that too. This part here comes off. Same type of screw deal. And I thought that was being held. Some models have these screws holding in this part here. On this case, it's not. It's being held in by those two screws at the bottom. Sometimes, oh, there's a gasket right there. Pay attention to those two holes when you're putting them in. Okay, I'm going to take that apart now. Okay, so once you got these two screws out, put everything right there, and then put the two screws back into here so you don't lose them, so you know where they go. Oh, and now that we got this out, we can take a look at the piston and the piston ring. So as you can see, when you pull the piston down, there's no scoring on the piston, which is nice. There's the single ring right there. There seems to be nothing wrong with the cylinder inside of it, so therefore I would say that there is no debris or anything that we need to look. But if we want to look inside there more, we can take out the spark plug and look in there. Now let's look at our component here. This part here of the throttle line, squeeze that and it goes into this hole here. Examine it. Make sure that there is no debris that is inside there. There's a little gasket right there. Make sure that is not damaged in any way. This looks fine. The holes are nice and clear. Here's our carburetor. There are usual markings on this carburetor to identify it, whether it's a Walbro or a Zama or what have you. This does not have any unless it's right there. Yes, it does. See, that's why you gotta clean stuff so you can see that. So that says, there's some identification marks on there. You know what, I'm gonna clean this up a little bit better. But you can buy these cheaply online, and there's a little bit of fuel. There we go, there's the name, Walbro. Right there. So this is a Walbro carburetor. This is a genuine carburetor. So when I press this down, you should see fuel coming out of either the top one or the bottom one. I think it would be the top one. So here we go. Yeah. So this is the fuel return, which goes into the gas tank. The bottom one hooks up to the fuel filter, and that draws the fuel in to the carburetor, which sucks it up through the body here into the primary bulb, and then as you press it down, it pushes that out like you just seen. And what that does is it just circulates the fuel into here, so that way when you start it up, the fuel is there ready to go and fire it up. Okay, now we're going to take off this part here, this part here. Okay, ladies and gentlemen, I just took the back cover off right there, and there's 3 screws. There's one here, and one on the bottom right there. Whenever you take these off, remember, put them back exactly where they are supposed to be so you know where they go the next time. Now, when I looked at this cover, it goes on just like that, but look what I found. The information about the Weed Whacker. The model of this is W25SBK. Blah, 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 blah. 25 cubic centimeters and all that bullshit. Good. So, I'm getting closer to finding the information. I'm going to use that information and get the user manual and the parts manual for this. The parts manuals vary from machine to machine. In order to get this off, this needs to come off. And these have screws on the side here. See those? That's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Those 5 screws need to come up before this does. Once this cover has came off, I just took those 4 out. There, 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 and there. I did not touch that one. After that, I just slipped that out and put it right there. Gonna need to take pliers, pull that out, take this apart, pull that out, and that line can be free. Then this bottom part can come out. Okay, once you got that throttle part taken apart, you're gonna notice that this line just comes out freely, so pay attention to this. Pay attention to how it looks. Okay, so on this side of the cable, you've got a T. On this one, you got a Z. The Z hooks up to the carburetor. The T hooks up to the handle, which is in there. Okay, so pay attention to that. This has got to be greased too, so this will be greased inside the line there. It'll just be pulled out and whatever. There's 4 screw holes. There's one there, one there, one in the bottom, one in the side. You see this one here was the one that was in the side there. So this is how this one looks. It's got a square bit on the end which fits right into that, which helps pull it out. Okay, and then once those 4 screws out, this can come out. Okay, so we have the engine disconnected from the housing there. I'm going to point out a very important fact. The moment you take off these 4 screws, you're going to run into these wires here, which are holding everything together. So take a look at this video and pay attention to how these wires look. You see this one here is connected to the top part right there, and that wire is connected to the switch. So this goes to the bottom part of that switch. Do you see? And this one here goes on to this part right there. Okay, so pay very close to these attention to these wires, because this one's skinny and the other one's fat, and this one here and that one there are the same size. Do not get those two wires mixed up, and make sure that you put them in properly, exactly where they're supposed to be. Now what I'm going to do is I'm going to put this on the ground, and we're going to analyze this engine a little bit more. Okay, so the engine here looks pretty brand new, and the guy who sold me the Weed Whacker said that he only used it about 20 times, 25 times, and as you can tell, the flywheel, the mechanism for the rewind on this, there is no clutch. I'm burping. Okay, so what we're gonna do, I'm just gonna take this off. We're gonna disconnect the gas tank. I'm just gonna turn it over. We're gonna take this cover off and the muffler, and we're gonna take out those bolts there, which are accessible to the top. There's one there and one right there. And then we're gonna look at the cylinder inside. Okay, everything is T25. Alright, so this looks pretty good for what's been only used a few times. And the only reason why I'm taking it apart is just so you all can have an idea of what to look for when you have problems. Okay, so here is the engine stripped down to its main components. Everything has been taken apart. This here is the exhaust. This here is the intake. Okay, so as I was saying, you can look into there at the top of the piston. This back cover comes out, and you can have a better look at the piston in there. And what I see is a perfectly round cylinder with nothing wrong with it. So there's a seal. When you put that, there's a seal on here. Pay attention to that seal, that it's not leaking, it's not broken or anything. That's what's holding all the oil and stuff that is in there, preventing it from leaking. Look at this edge here, make sure it's not cracked. And as I was saying, there's bolts. There's one into there and one in there, which this head comes off. As a result of what it is that I am seeing, this head does not need to come out, but if you needed to get that connecting rod out, those two bolts would come out, and then you are able to take this connecting rod out. It just slips out, and then you can work on the flywheel by taking it out from there. Okay, so yeah, there's a little nut right there. Hold on. There is a little nut right there that comes out, which this pops right out. That's how you take that flywheel out. Alright, now let's look at the spark plug. Spark plug, if you can see it, there is nothing too wrong with it. It's just black and normally on the top. All I have to do is just clean that out. The ignition coil, there is nothing wrong with it, so you can test this with your multimeter. You have a connection there. There's a reading on these 2 points, there's a reading on these 2 points, and there's a reading on these 2 points with your multimeter. The manufacturer specifications will tell you what those readings will be. Now, after looking at all this, what we're going to do now is we're going to look at this. So I'm just going to put this to a side right there, and now this comes apart, this carburetor. Okay, looking at the carburetor. As I was showing you earlier, you can find the name right there, Walbro. Okay, and the numbers for that are right there. Okay, now I want to show you something else. It's because it's a Weedeater. Believe it or not. Oh, where the hell did I see it? Where the hell did I see it? There we go. Weedeater is made by Husqvarna. Okay, but when you look at the bottom of this, you're gonna see it says Poulan Weedeater. Okay, so Poulan and Weedeater are the kid brother and sister to the mother corporation, Husqvarna. When it comes to carburetors, Walbro or Zama are used in all of the small engines. Now, if you want to buy a carburetor that looks like this, you can go to Weedeater, you can go to Poulan, or you can go to Husqvarna, or you can type in Walbro and look up those digit numbers right there, and you can buy this carburetor directly from Walbro. This carburetor ranges between $30 to $50 Canadian. Okay, so you can either do that, or you can go on Wish online and buy this for about 20 bucks or under, maybe $5 on Wish. But you're going to find that you might have troubles with the carburetor being a cheap one as opposed to buying an original. So I'm going to use this screwdriver here, and I'm going to strip this apart for you to all see the insides of it. Okay, everybody, our carburetor is stripped. So right inside there is a screen, which is that one right there. Okay, as I was trying to say, the gasket part is on top of the plastic which onto this. Do not get these two mixed up. Once again, you'll have problems. This is what it's supposed to look like. Okay, so when it comes to a carburetor repair kit, I'm going to get this part here, these two parts, this two parts, and I'm also going to get this entire ordeal right there. That is the carburetor repair kit. So I'm going to go look for my kit. Oh my gosh, ladies and gentlemen, as it turns out, in my entire arsenal here, I do not have the carburetor repair kit for this. But I have something completely different, so that tells me that this is a very old one. What I'm gonna have to do is just put everything back together with the same stuff. So there is I'm gonna have to rinse out this screen, and then blow all the holes out, make sure that they get cleared out. And oh, one thing, when I took out these two here, I took those out and they were very grimy. You're gonna see two seals in there. Be careful of those seals, okay? I'm gonna take those seals out and then put the stuff back in there. I'm gonna put this all back together. Okay, so now the ultimate test whether or not the carburetor functions properly is we're gonna see if it drinks. So we're going to use that fuel there, we're going to suck it up through the tube, and we're going to see if it spits out up here when we press the primer bulb, okay? And we should be able to see the fuel flowing through. So, there we go. Okay, there it is. Now, pressing the primer bulb, here we go. There we go, you see that? Something else that you're going to notice too, when you look at the line, you're not going to see any air bubbles. If you see air bubbles in the line coming from your gas tank, that means there's a leak somewhere, either in the line or in the carburetor. Okay, so this is a good carburetor. So now I'm gonna take this out, put it right there, and I'm gonna flush out the carburetor. This is the way that you flush out a carburetor at the end of the year. You press the primer bulb, you take out the gas line, you flush the gas, you completely drain the carburetor of any fuel in it, and then you don't have to go and take it all apart again to service it because you left fuel in the gas tank. That is one of the major causes of carburetor failure, is not flushing out your carburetor or cleaning out your gas tank. Some people put fuel stabilizer in. I would not do that. If I knew that I was going to be storing my weed whacker or my engine, I would flush out the gas, I would flush out the carburetor, I would store it with zero fuel anywhere, residue. Otherwise it's going to build up and you're just going to have to fix it. Somebody like me is going to have to come along and make another video on why I'm fixing it, because you stored it with the fuel in it. So don't store carburetors with fuel inside. So now this all can slowly get put back together. Here we go. Okay, when it comes time to put your ignition coil back onto your flywheel, a lot of you might be wondering where do I put it on? Some people will just put this on blindly on this part here and then it'll get stuck. So this here is not the same distance as this here. You're going to find that out. So take the magnets, put them up, and what I use as a feeler gauge is a piece of paper. I put a piece of paper on there, just like that, and then I go and put my ignition coil and stick it on there. And that piece of paper thickness is just enough gap between these two faces here and this face here. Okay, this is your magnets. This here is not a magnet. This here is a magnet. This here is not a magnet. This here is a magnet. And to prove that, see how it sticks? It sticks. I can barely take it off. Let's go to the other side. Is it doing that? No, it's not doing that. Okay? So, always use the magnet side when you're putting in your ignition coil. And you could use feeler gauges if you want. I just use a piece of paper. Okay, so I just want to show everybody what the it looks like when I use that piece of paper. See that distance right there I was talking about earlier? That's a little bit more shallow than the actual magnet part. When you look at the actual magnet part, it's like so right there, but it's not touching. So you see that? You can't really see it right there, but you can sort of. It's not touching and it spins freely around. Okay, so that's what we're looking for. Okay, so when it comes to your fuel tank, you empty it out, flush it out with whatever, make sure there's no grease or anything in there. If you have any grime that you notice in it that's not coming out with regular flushing, take a whole bunch of screws, throw them in there, and then shake them around violently. It will loosen them up. These two holes are different sizes, as I just found out. This one is 4 millimeters. This one is 4.5 millimeters. These are the two original lines that came out, and I'm going to replace them because over time, plastic will deteriorate, and regardless of the material that's making these, if you leave these out in the sunlight, they will crack, and you will have problems with them. And I'm just going to go into my arsenal here and just replace those fuel lines at the same length. Looking at the fuel filter, I see that it's pretty brand new. So all I need to do is give it a shot there just to make it flow out here with fluid, and it should just be like pretty good. So this part here, the lid should be cleaned out. This here is a pressure relief. So when there's pressure building up in the gas tank, that little hole there puts a little bit of air so that way it doesn't explode on you. That is in actuality if you leave your weed whacker out in a hot environment or in the sunlight. Now these gas tanks in particular are very brittle. If you see the scuff marks on the bottom of this gas tank, that means this gas tank is sitting on the ground. The ground could be anything from pavement, grass, wood, concrete, or whatever. And when people put a weed whacker down, they just clunk right on the ground. So depending on the durability of this plastic or where you put it, you could very well crack the gas tank anywhere here. There needs to be a guard on the bottom of this, which I will look into, or a rubber compound to put underneath that to prevent people from slamming it down onto the pavement and cracking the gas tank. That is a huge problem. And now we're just slowly putting this all together. Okay, so as I'm buttoning this up, I just wanted to point out to everybody the throttle cable. There's two holes there. Do you see that? I don't know if you can see. There's one right there and there's one below. That throttle cable goes onto the top one right there. And that will work properly when you hit the trigger. Okay, if you put it under the bottom one, it's not going to do this. Now, the next thing is the fuel lines. You need to make sure you know which fuel line is which. Okay, so this one here is the return. There's nothing attached to this one at the bottom, but this one has a fuel filter attached on the inside. Now, because we already did this test before where we hooked up a line to the bottom here that sucked the gas in, and the top one is the one that returned the gas. So this line, the one that is attached to the fuel filter, goes on to the one right there. This one here is the return, so it goes on top. Okay? So, now if you find that you got a bit of an air leak in there, take some clamps and put the clamps right onto there, and that'll help fasten it down a little bit better. And now I'm just going to put the back cover on. Okay, so this is now all done up nicely. What I'm going to work on now is the head here. We're going to take this all apart, look at the insides. We're going to switch the line out for a heavier line, and we're going to clean all that out. So here we go. Okay, so this head came off nicely, just as I thought. I'm going to look into there. It's a bit grimy, grungy, dirty in there. There's two screws that come out. This one here goes into that hole. It's a coarse thread. This here is a fine thread. Those ones are right there. Okay. Now, when you're taking this apart, this part slides into there, and this part here, this little lip, goes up top. You see that? So, this slides right under there onto that, and it attaches onto the head right here. See? Okay. So now this is the shaft. As you can see, there's a lot of dirt and grass in there. It's going to be all cleaned out. We're going to do that. We're going to put it back into the line there, get it all nice and greased. And this part here, we can clean that out. I think, we're not going to touch this as much. That screw comes out so you can put grease into it. So we're going to flush that out. We're going to clean his head up a little bit more. And then we're going to look at the line here, this. See how this works? Just a little bit of line left in there. So I got a heavy duty line for this I'm going to put in there. But because this is a 25 cubic centimeter engine, you don't necessarily need a line that's any heavier than this. You should not be mowing down tough stick like this here. You cannot mow that down with a weed whacker. If it's soft like this, you can chew it up. The stuff here, you cannot chew it up. this stuff here, you can. But when you have a line like this, it's meant for lighter grass, small, short. And this weed whacker is only meant for light applications. If you want a heavier application, you need a more powerful weed whacker. Alright everybody, it's all ready to go. Everything is cleaned up. There's gas in there. I pressed the primer bulb. The primer bulb is full when you hit it. You see that? That's what it's supposed to look like when it's full. When you look at the fuel lines, there is no air bubbles. So when you press the primer bulb down, it should be pressing out the fuel into this one and then sucking it through this one. So when you push in, you're pushing the fuel out. When you're letting it go, you're sucking the fuel in. Pushing out, sucking in. Pushing out, sucking in. Pushing out, sucking in. You see air bubbles in there, but that's just because there's a loose connection between the hose and this here part of the carburetor. So I gotta adjust that part, but all in all, it looks good. Now, I did go to start it, and I gotta mess around with those jets right there to get them adjusted properly. Not a big deal, because this is the choke, this is half choke. This is what you use to get it to start. This is what you use it to run it for about a minute. And then once it's got hot after a minute of use, then you put it on full bore, and then you have the throttle all the way down, like wah, 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 like wah, wah. Okay? Now, there is a problem that I am finding, and that is when I pull this really fast, it's knocking against something in here, and I don't know what that is. So what I'm gonna have to do is I'm just gonna adjust the jets, start it, and see if this becomes a problem, because when I pull it really fast, it feels like it's knocking against something. There's something either wrong with the rewind, or maybe the flywheel is hitting the ignition coil, which is a probability. Because when a flywheel runs really fast, it slowly starts to expand, and it probably hits the ignition coil. So I'm gonna get my trusty tool. Where's my trusty tools? These ones here. Which one am I looking for? This one, spline. Okay. This one here goes into there. Oh, this is the wrong size. There's another one in here that I got. This one is also spline. It's a smaller one. I think it's a smaller one. Might fit into there. Yes, it fits. Okay, so when you do adjustments on your carburetor, you need to do it on the high jet first, and then the low jet, or the low jet and high. I can't remember which one, but you gotta seat them in all the way in, and then pull them out a quarter turn each way until it looks good, feels good, sounds good. That's what I'm gonna do right now. And then we're gonna look at the head here. So I got the heavy duty line on here, like I was talking about earlier, that on a light weed whacker like this one, it's not meant for heavy duty grass. So this line needs to change. When you read the instruction manual, it tells you which line that you need for your weed whacker. So this is not it. I'm gonna have to get the proper one later, and I'm gonna work on this like right now. Okay, so one of the things that I did not do was take the compression of the spark plug hole. So here I have a compression checker, and it's upside down, and I can't really affix my phone just to capture this, so I'm gonna rip on the cord. It's gonna put compression into there, and we're gonna check the reading. Okay, so bear with me. I'm gonna pull it once, then twice, then 3 times. I'm gonna pull it about 6 times, and you're gonna be able to see it. So here we go. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Okay, so when we look at this, well, let's look at this a little bit better. This is our compression rating after 6 pulls, and the needle is not going down. So what that means is this has pretty good compression, and it's not losing any air as I do it. You see, this here is the release of that. So when I press this, we go down. So this has pretty good compression for this to start. I just wanted to show everybody that. Okay, ladies and gentlemen, so this carburetor, this weed whacker is ready to go. Everything is working on that side. Everything is working inside here properly. I found out that just because this is an easy start type of pull rewind, that it's going to like have difficulty pulling. But everything on here is perfect. The primer bulb is full. There's a brand new fuel line, so when you press this, fuel goes in, fuel goes out. You're supposed to press this about 10 times. That's just to surge the fuel that goes through there, and the fuel should be bouncing around in there like it's supposed to be. See that? There should be 0 bubbles anywhere when you press the fuel in, pressing it out. A full primer bulb will look like that. Okay, and there is gas in there, the correct mix ratio. This is ready to go. I did go and mess with the jets and I pulled them out, so this should start a little bit better. So when you start it, put it on choke first, pull the cord, let it do its thing. It'll rumble a little bit, and when it rumbles, put it in half choke. Then start this again, pull it out, and when it does, it'll rumble a little bit more, maybe a little bit less. Keep putting it on choke, half choke, half choke, until this starts to idle nicely. When this idles nicely, let it idle for about a minute, and then hit the trigger, and then let it run on this half choke for about a minute. After a minute of hitting the trigger, then put it into full choke, and then hit the trigger, and then the revolutions of minutes on the head will be a lot more. But only do this when it's cold. So when you read this, this is the cold start. This down here is the hot start. Okay, you got to read these directions carefully. So when you watch me start it, I'm going to start it right there. I'm going to go back and forth between these two until this unit idles. And then after that, I'm going to hit the trigger. And then after a minute, I'm going to go full bore, and you're going to see the head go nuts. Okay, so that is how I'm going to start it up right now. Okay, so it occurred to me that while I'm starting this up, I'm going to be adjusting the carburetor on the high setting to get the throttle going. I just switched the line here to spool the other way because I had it spooled this way and the line would not come out. So I changed it. So now you're going to watch me start it up to get this properly working. Alright, so there you have it, ladies and gentlemen. This weed whacker works exactly like it is supposed to. Okay? And what I'm going to do is I'm going to change the line over to a smaller line. Now, what I'm going to talk about is the line head. As a result of this being a thick line head, that means it's heavier in weight. The manufacturer suggests that you use a lighter line. Now, this will turn at probably, let's just say, 1600 revolutions a minute with this line. If you use the line that's supposed to be on it, it'll turn a lot faster. And it'll go up to about maybe 2000 revolutions a minute, and it will be meant and designed for the small weed whacker that you're supposed to be cutting with green leaves. So I just put this on here just because that's all that I had left, but I would need to go buy a whole bunch of more line. But if you're going to use line, use the recommended manufacturer specs for cutting line. As for the engine is in tip-top shape. It now works. It is fully functional the way it is supposed to. We're going to do a last pan. Everything has been cleaned up. And this weed whacker is ready to go. Ladies and gentlemen, there you have it. That's it.